Hello everyone! The other day on the stream I was reading these steamy romance novels, which you can find in the game, and we had such a good laugh that I figured that all of you should know the stories. It's about a man named Marcus that has some special kind of adventures within Warcraft, and his story is so brilliant that it can't just be told. You have to experience the story, so we brought some friends together to bring you the story of Marcus as described within the steamy romance novels. Let's discover what he has done in Warcraft and try to figure out who exactly he is, since that's still quite the mystery. It's a little bit different from what I usually do, so I hope you'll enjoy. Our journey begins simple, and yet gives a clue as to what Marcus is. It's the original steamy romance novel. As Nani glided up, the grizzled warrior gave it a hard stare.
I suppose you're here to collect the reward for killing those murlocs.
Her eyes wandered down to the glowing broadsword at his side.
That depends on what the reward is, Marcus.
She twirled her hair playfully, pretending not to notice how he shifted uncomfortably in her presence.
I may not want it.
Marcus stepped toward her, bristling with a mixture of fear and anger.
The reward is not negotiable.
He paused for a moment while gathering his nerve and pressed himself against her diminutive form. Their lips met hotly, melting her frost armor spell in a torrent of sweltering vapor.
So, is there another step to this quest?
She teased, her eyes glittering with excitement. This goes on for several hundred more pages without advancing the plot. So Marcus apparently is a quest giver, and he sends people away to kill some murlocs. His rewards are a little bit different from what we receive in game, but it's just the first clue. The next story shows us what faction he belongs to. It's a steamy romance novel, Hot and Misty. Marcus galloped on his warhorse towards the remote building, bringing an almost imperceptible flush to one of the curvier guards as he paused. He dismounted and handed his reins to the ever-present stablemaster, placing one hand on his shoulder before speaking.
Karma, have you considered our last conversation?
Marcus asked, furrowing his eyebrows in mock seriousness. Kama rolled her eyes, her Pandaren markings exaggerating the movements.
I doubt my life mate would think much of it.
Marcus let out a bellowing laugh, looking over his shoulder as he walked away.
I'd still like to meet her one day.
The tavern in the mist was unusually crowded as he pushed his way through the crowd until he stood in the shadows of a dark corner. An exotic voice purred his name.
Marcus, it is good to see you again.
Marcus smiled and squinted as his eyes adjusted to the absence of light.
Madam Goya, the pleasure is all mine.
She dipped in a polite bow. Marcus felt a sudden warmth as he was reminded why the term bouncy was often used to describe the Pandaren. He bowed in kind, catching Madame Goya's hand and kissing it gently, never shifting his gaze from the hulking bodyguard standing behind her, a single scar between his watchful eyes.
So, Marcus, can I interest you in something special? I'm afraid the usual cannot be offered today.
Marcus did not miss her emphasis on the usual, nor the deep regrets that laced her words. Their eyes met once again, and he squeezed his hand before letting go.
If that is your will, may I see what else you have to offer?
There are several magnificent pieces of armor, a tiny companion, and even an exotic mount.
Madame Goya answered, her typical playfulness quickly returning. She paused and held a hand to her chin, feigning thoughtfulness.
But my most valuable treasures are located upstairs.
Marcus' eyebrows lifted comically and his eyes widened before his expression settled in gleeful acceptance.
Until we meet again, then.
Her eyes fluttered, and Marcus found himself walking up the stairs of the strange tavern. Waiting in the room at the top were two beings of such beauty that he nearly stumbled on the final step. One had long flowing hair, the color of the sunwell itself, and the other kept her ebon hair cropped short. After several long moments of wordless, lust-filled glances, a realization struck him. He was looking into the faces of the enemy. He unsheathed his mighty sword, bathing the blood elves in its pulsating glow. The elf with radiant hair spoke first.
Goodness, it looks like someone is ready for battle.
She placed her hand on the tip of his sword, lowering it with gentle pressure as she crossed in front of him, always keeping her head cocked in his direction.
Do you
you believe in love at first sight, or should I walk by again?
Marcus leaned in close, carelessly pressing the hardened steel against her. He whispered something quietly in her ear and pulled away, eagerly searching her face for a reaction.
No, I won't do that. But my sister will.
The dark-haired one silently raised a single eyebrow, nodding and shrugging her delicate shoulders at the same time. With a subtle gesture, her body glowed with an intense inner fire, burning away what little clothing she wore. As Marcus' muscular arms wrapped around her, she whispered something to him. A symbol, unseen by Marcus, momentarily appeared above his head and surrounded him in a white glow.
That feels amazing. What did you do?
He asked.
Fortitude, my lord. You will need it.
It was then that he noticed she was literally levitating off the ground, weightless in his arms. His mind began to spin as countless scenarios played out in his head. His strong hands began to... The remaining pages are shrouded in mists. Clearly, Marcus is part of the Alliance, but when it comes to love, factions means little. They set the war aside for a moment and engulfed themselves in whatever was shrouded by the mists. Marcus doesn't confine himself to factions, nor does he just share his love with those born on his planet. That story is told within a steamy romance novel, Blue Moon. Tail swooshing and hips swaying, the curvy figure walked purposefully across the lake toward the man resting by the shore. Rising quickly as she approached, he appeared visibly happy to be in her presence. Blue arms flowed over his shoulders as a smooth tail coiled seductively around his waist.
Why must I travel so far to be meeting men like you?
Her voice carried a strong, alluring accent. Grinning wildly, he gently pushed her away, openly staring as the light caught her features.
Up here.
She exclaimed in playful anger. With a helpless shrug, he reached into his pack and pulled out a small pouch.
My wonderful Sula, I've brought you something.
Confidence wrapped his words like a steel blanket. She plucked a tiny bag from his hands, excitedly pulling it open, revealing a citrine pendant.
Oh, Marcus, you shouldn't have.
The usual teasing was gone from his voice.
Every facet lights the sky, and my heart with your beautiful reflection.
Sula frowns.
Oh, no, I meant you really shouldn't have. I could craft something better by accident.
For the first time, possibly ever, Marcus looked hurt. His shoulders slumped slightly, the cocky, ever-present grin missing from his handsome face. Sula opened her mouth to speak, smiling warmly. A glowing ruin appeared above her eyes.
I don't think I can mend your feelings, even with my gift.
Despite the statement, her words seemed to do the trick. Marcus smirked roguishly as he adjusted his leg plates.
Well, you aren't the only gifted one.
Silence penetrated the room with palpable force as the conversation shifted to the language shared by all races of Azeroth. Minutes became hours until their passionate dialogue was interrupted, lightning streaking from the cloudless sky, thunderously slamming into the lake's surface and bathing them in steam.
Is something wrong?
No, my Marcus. You're just off to a great start.
The remaining pages have been thoroughly destroyed by the elements. The Draenei Sula was one of the few able to shake Marcus's confidence, but the gift of the Naru was able to mend his pride. As I was reading the stories on stream, I couldn't believe that they were all about this one guy, all about Marcus, until I came across the next story and a glimmer of hope rose up. It's a steamy romance novel, Big Brass Bombs. The tough little goblin walked purposefully into the engineering shop, raising her eyebrows at a few items as she approached the shopkeeper.
How's it going, Jack?
Her voice seductively brushed his pointy ears with the rough texture of someone who inhaled too much motorcycle exhaust. The goblin called Jack looked up and grinned.
Revy, it's going much better since you just arrived.
Jack set his arc-light spanner on the table.
What can I do you for?
Holding her elbow in one hand, Revy tapped her chin lightly.
I'm not real sure. You got any specials?
Are you kidding? I got the best deals anywhere. Just got these in this morning in all sorts of colors. Small red rockets, got some in blue and green too.
Revy's disappointed look was not missed by the expert shopkeeper, and he quickly upped the ante. There was a loud thud as Jack dropped something on the table.
I call it the big one. It's goblin only. very difficult to find.
Nice. Very nice.
Revi said, sounding unconvinced. Her eyes wandered a bit.
Okay, fine. I can see you're a goblin of superb taste.
Jack looked around conspiratorially before carefully laying out a new item, buckling the table with an ominous crack.
It's called
Jack paused for dramatic effects.
the bigger one.
Revi's eyes widened in surprise.
Is it real?
Feeling the advantage, Jack allowed himself to relax a bit. Putting his hands behind his head and leaning back in his chair, he replied with lazily narrowed eyes.
It's 100% goblin parts, baby. Natural resources.
After a moment of hesitation, Revi reached out and gingerly stroked the smooth yellow surface.
I'll take 2.
Excellent. You know, if you like that, you might be interested in some hardened adamantite tubes. They can enhance the effect.
Revi nodded excitedly and looked behind Jack at something on the wall.
Ooh, what is that?
Oh, those are for reviving dead people.
Can they be used on someone while they're still alive?
Never wanting to miss a sale, Jack responded without missing a beat.
Oh, sure. Tell you what, you get all this stuff, and I'll throw in a pair of mayhem protection goggles for half the price.
Revi pulled out a sack of coins that made Jack drool.
Why not? Motorcycle sales have been good this year.
As Jack quickly tallied the total, he asked,
This must be one serious raid or something.
Nah, I got a blind date with a guy named Marcus tonight.
What about that guy from the motor club you was dating?
The leather-clad goblin scooped up her bag with one arm and held up an outstretched hand.
He never put a ring on it. Girl's gotta have her priorities.
Jack smiled and shook his head as he watched her walk out of the shop. So close, we were so close to getting a story without Marcus, but nope. The goblin Revi, she was getting ready for her dates, and the toys will probably make it very, very interesting. Marcus gets even freakier in the next story though, the next one called A Steamy Romance Novel, Forbidden Love. Afusa crept silently through the massive underground tunnel, nervously looking over her shoulder in anticipation of the fast-moving tram.
Where is he?
She muttered angrily, stopping suddenly as something moved behind her. Her eyes narrowed dangerously as her dagger slid from its sheath. A husky voice echoed in the hollow chamber.
I thought rogues liked to be behind their target.
She spun quickly, driving her blade into a shield of impenetrable force.
And I thought paladins were supposed to be chaste.
She replied with a confident smirk. Leaning forward, she counted out loud until the invisible bubble dissipated with an audible pop.
12 seconds. I know you have abilities that last longer than that.
Bony fingers worked effortlessly beneath his armor, unlatching his breastplate and exposing him to the cold air.
Don't worry, my sweet Marcus. That's not a finishing move tonight. I'm just getting started.
He wrapped his arms around what remained of her waist, forcing an excited giggle as he nibbled at her neck vertebrae. The rest of the book has several sections that are apparently worn out from repeated readings. You should have seen the shock on my face when I realized that Afusa, she was actually a Forsaken. I guess everything goes in Warcraft, and now we also know what class Marcus is. He's a paladin, and considering what he's up to, that might be a very good thing. A paladin always brings his own hand of protection, but that's not the only way Marcus uses the light for, shall we say, his love. That story can be found within a steamy romance novel, Northern Exposure. The tiny gnome peered over the railing into the secluded Dalaran courtyards.
The view from the balcony is amazing. You have to come see.
Arm and leg plates creaked as Marcus walked over, taking in a deep breath as he absently scratched his scruffy chin.
The hero's welcome is no slouch, and there's something in the room that might interest you.
Tevi bounded into the room, pausing only a moment before jumping onto the massive bed. She turned to gaze at Marcus while her huge saucer-like eyes narrowing them playfully and replacing her glowing smile with a diabolical grin.
Interested in some more company?
She purred as her hands weaved through a complex summoning ritual, stopping only when she felt the warmth of a new presence behind her. All color drained from Marcus's face as he struggled to protest.
I don't think that's appropriate.
Confused, Tevi turned to see what was wrong. A hideous fellhound stood ready, drooling onto the floor as it stared intently at the half-armored paladin.
No, that's not what I meant.
She stammered as she dispelled the hungry demon.
I'm sorry. That's not really my specialty.
Marcus took both her hands in one of his as he reassured her.
It's fine. What is your specialization?
Her head snapped up, eyes burning with renewed life as shadowy energy channeled through her hands into Marcus, dropping him to his knees in agony.
Affliction, actually.
Gritting his teeth, Marcus gestured as light flashed over him, restoring his strength. Tevi stared anxiously as he rose to his full height, engulfing her in his shadow. He thrust his hand forward, sending a wave of righteous force through her. Eyes rolled back as she wavered for several seconds before regaining consciousness.
I've recently taken the path of retribution.
The mischief smirk returned to her face.
Well then, this is going to be fun.
The remaining pages have a level 999 requirement to read. A warlock and a paladin. I can't imagine what fun they might have had. A little while ago, some of you asked me if there were any gay couples to be found within Warcraft, and at the time I thought we had a few suggested, but none actually confirmed. That all changed when I read the final story, a steamy romance novel, Savage Passions. Savage. A trail of dust followed the once white stallion as he galloped through the garrison gates, stopping abruptly at the stables. Raven, the stable master, rushed to the weary mount and rider.
Lord Marcus, let me help.
Raven's strong, tanned arms took the rider's hand in his own, pulling him off in a quick, smooth motion. He did not immediately let go, staring in disbelief at the paladin's heavily stained armor. Seeing concern on the man's face, Marcus clasped his shoulder and smiled warmly.
Fear not, old friend. Only a little of it is my own.
Raven hugged him fiercely.
Well, that is good to hear.
Yes, I'm fine. The journey was long and often hard, but I have returned victorious.
Marcus exclaimed as he pulled a bulging sack from beneath his armor, placing it gingerly in Raven's rough, steady hands. The inquisitive stablemaster cupped the bag, squeezing gently to discern the contents without unwrapping the package.
Don't be coy. You know what's in there. But I have something even better for you.
Marcus said with a knowing smile. Raven closed his eyes. He held out his hands and spoke calmly.
Oh, give it to me, please.
His arms flexed slightly as he felt something heavy, strangely warm and smooth along its length.
Oh, this is... familiar. Okay, yes. I know that part. An enchanted sword!
Raven released the glowing weapon from one hand, letting it swing in front of him. Marcus looked down and raised his eyebrows.
I'm glad you like it. Certainly not the first one you've held.
Oh, never one like this.
Raven replied with a wink.
We need to work on that grip. It's too tight. Perhaps you have some time for some practice?
Marcus asked, peering into Raven's dark brown eyes. Raven grinned.
I'll go tie up your horse.
The remaining pages are not yet written. It appears to be a work in progress. And that's the last steamy romance novel. That's the story of Marcus. Now the question remains, who is Marcus? And honestly, we have no idea. In the past, people speculated that this story was about Marcus Jonathan, an NPC you could find in front of Stormwind. But Marcus Jonathan, he's been blown up with the bombing of Veramor. The story continues even after the bombing, like the one with Madame Goya, so it seems unlikely that this is our guy. All we know is that he's a male human paladin that doesn't shy away from sharing his love with the world. Who knows what else, or I should actually say who else Marcus might do in the future, but for now, his story is done. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you had as much fun watching the video as we had making it, because damn, this was one hell of a project, but it was also so much fun. I want to give proper credit for all of those who worked on the video. First of all, we have Khayllys, who pretty much made the entire video. All the graphics, all the machinima, all of this, what you see on the screen, is from her hands, and I think she did a brilliant job. Bringing such a story to life is no easy task, and on the screen I'll link one of her videos. This is the story of the Baraf family, which all of you lore lovers out there will probably enjoy. Next we have Alex from Fatboss as our hero Marcus. Fatboss TV mostly does guides for YouTube, but they also have a brilliant and fun stream which you can find over at the Twitch. SilverLetomi, Sharm and PVPGURL GiGi are mostly known for their songs on YouTube. Some are parodies, some are originals, but all of them are a great listen. Some of the ladies also stream over at Twitch, so make sure to check the description for their links and I'll place a few examples of their videos on the screen. Finally, we have Nixxiom and Kavo. Nixxiom does some amazing machinimas. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're beautiful, but they're always great. While Kavo, he's done some brilliant parody songs, but he also does vlogs and gameplay. All of the links to YouTube channels, their Twitch channels, their Twitter, their Facebook, all the places where you can find them on the internet, they're linked down below. I've had a ton of fun working with each and every one of them. This is something entirely new for me, right? So it was brilliant to do it with this group. And I hope you might enjoy their channels or enjoy their stuff after checking out some of the links. You might find your new favorite YouTuber out there. I surely hope so. Right everyone, that brings us to the end of the video. So once again, thank you very much for watching and I truly hope you enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to share the video around, leave a lovely comment for the team and have a great week everyone. Until next time guys, see ya!